Ears, because sometimes the smallest detail carries the heaviest truth, haha. And she noticed it now, almost by accident. Awe, a slip of a hand, a glance that lingered too long on nothing, a phrase repeated just slightly differently than before, and in that fraction of a moment, the entire design revealed itself, the affair that had seemed polite, careful, and distant now standing clear in her mind like a map. Every reassurance, every gentle instruction, every soft laugh aligning into a pattern that left no room for doubt. Ha ha. And isn't it astonishing how betrayal hides in plain sight? How the ordinary gestures we trust most can be turned into tools of exclusion. Awe. The airport bench beneath her now seemed both familiar and foreign. The hum of announcements and footsteps carrying a new, sharper weight, and she felt the hollow ache settle deep in her chest. Ha ha. A quiet, sorrowful recognition that she had been deliberately abandoned, left to wait while others moved forward without her. Awe. And Miss Marple, ever precise, ever patient, traced each tiny inconsistency, noting the calculated kindnesses, the measured smiles, the orchestrated pauses, until the entire truth fit neatly into place. Ha ha. A slow, deliberate clarity washing over her, and she understood that the real danger had never been in anger or noise, but in quiet, courteous intention, in planning that relied on trust itself. Awe, and as the realization settled, a soft, almost imperceptible shiver ran through her. Ha ha. Yet even in that moment of hurt and recognition, she drew herself upright, pressing her hands lightly to her knees. Awe, knowing that understanding was power, that seeing the full pattern before others did gave her the quiet advantage. And with that calm awareness, she began to consider, with the gentle patience of one who had observed human nature for decades, how best to endure, how to respond, and how to carry herself forward without allowing the deliberate cruelty to define ears, because even when a story seems to have concluded, there are whispers in the spaces between what is seen and what is felt, ha-ha, and she paused at the threshold of the terminal, awe, letting the sunlight spill across her hands, noticing how ordinary moments, footsteps, rolling luggage, distant laughter, carry lessons if one listens closely enough, ha-ha. And isn't it remarkable? Isn't it quietly unsettling how trust can be both fragile and resilient? How betrayal can arrive politely, softly, yet leave marks that linger like shadows? Awe. And Miss Marple, who had spent a lifetime observing the unseen, reflected that the power to notice, to understand, and to respond with calm patience is often greater than the harm intended by others. Ha ha. And she let herself smile, awe, softly at the cleverness of human nature, the unexpected lessons in everyday interactions, the ways ordinary kindness can be twisted and ordinary cruelty can be disguised. Ha ha. Yet even so, the world remained full of moments worth seeing, worth attending to. Awe. And as she stepped into the sunlight, feeling the warmth settle gently on her shoulders, she understood that while others may choose deceit, those who listen, who observe, who understand, carry a quiet strength no betrayal can touch. Ha ha. Awe. And in that final, gentle triumph, she moved forward with dignity, curiosity, and patience, knowing that the world is always teaching, always testing, and that the eyes and ears of the attentive will always see what others miss, leaving the door open for the next mystery, the next truth, the next quiet victory. Ears, have you ever trusted someone so completely that a single polite word felt like safety, only to discover, later, that the kindness was a mask? Ha ha. Isn't it strange how the softest gestures can hide the sharpest betrayal? Awe, and how ordinary places, an airport bench, a sunlit terminal, can suddenly feel like stages for secrets, whispers, and deliberate absence? Imagine being left behind, watching familiar faces move away without a glance, feeling the hollow weight of trust quietly broken. Ha ha. Awe, and realizing that danger does not always roar, that betrayal often wears the face of courtesy, and that only the careful, the patient, The quietly observant can see the truth before it is too late. Even after understanding, even after patience has stretched across hours and insight has settled quietly in the chest, there's still a hum of what was a lingering note of what might have been, ha, and she walks slowly, letting the warmth of sunlight wash over her shoulders, noticing the soft, ordinary rhythms of people moving around her, the gentle tap of heels on tile, the whisper of rolling luggage. And isn't it remarkable how life continues in its polite indifference? Ha. And she reflected, that betrayal, though painful, need not define the one who notices it, that the smallest attentions, the quietest observations, the careful weighing of what is seen and what is not, form shields stronger than any anger. Ha. And Miss Marple, ever the careful watcher, understood that wisdom grows from noticing, from listening, from enduring without spectacle, awe. And she smiled faintly at the cleverness of human behavior, at the way ordinary gestures can mask intention. Ha. And yet she felt no bitterness, only calm clarity, awe, gentle certainty that those who watch, who listen, who understand are never abandoned, never powerless. Ha. And as she stepped out into the day, feeling the pulse of the world continuing unabated, she carried the quiet victory of seeing what others overlook, knowing that insight, patience, and gentle courage endure longer than deceit, and leaving just enough mystery lingering in the air to make one pause, to wonder, to listen closely. Ha. For even when chapter closes, the lessons, the whispers and the echoes of careful observation follow quietly, teaching those who will notice to always remain aware, steady, and quietly triumphant. Ears, because once the first shiver of suspicion settles, the mind begins to ask questions it had once been too polite to consider. Ha. Have you ever noticed how a familiar voice can suddenly sound unfamiliar? How a phrase repeated too often can carry hidden meaning? And isn't it strange how small gestures, handing over a coat, soft insistence to wait, the casual pat on the shoulder, can suddenly feel like traps if you pay close enough attention? How a laugh that once comforted now pricks like cold iron. And why is it that when we trust, we often do so without noticing the spaces in between words, the micro pauses that hint at something more, something planned, something unseen? Ha. Have you ever lingered in a room, a hallway, a public space, watching the way people move around you, and realized with a chill that their ease, their smiles, might not be for you at all? How quickly the ordinary can turn strange. How quickly a small kindness, a soft instruction, can tip into control, into deception. And here, on this same hard bench, she felt it. The subtle shift in the air, the quiet absence that made the waiting unbearable, the way her coat seemed heavier and the space beside her too empty. Ha. And Miss Marple, who had always noted the invisible threads connecting people, began to trace them now with careful attention. The way a shadow crosses a floor, the slight hesitation in footsteps, the careful avoidance of eyes, all whispering a story she had yet to see fully. And isn't it curious, isn't it almost unbearable, how some questions, the ones we dare not ask aloud, press against the ribs until they demand notice? And yet, even as the doubts pressed, there was that quiet insistence, that spark of observation, that whispered the truth would arrive, slowly, surely, and that only those who listened with both caution and courage would grasp the betrayal before it claimed them as witnesses, leaving a hollow ache, a soft, almost invisible mark. Ears, because even after understanding, even after the truth has settled like dust on old shelves, there remains the gentle echo of what was lost. And she walked slowly toward the exit, feeling the soft weight of solitude against her shoulders. Noticing the way sunlight struck the polished floor, how it caught the rolling wheels of luggage, the quiet murmur of conversations, and how life continued in cheerful indifference. And isn't it strange, isn't it almost unbearable how betrayal leaves a small mark inside us, a hollow that no apology can ever quite fill? Yet she found herself smiling faintly, a delicate curve of lips that carried both sorrow and resilience. Ha ha. Because she understood something few would notice. That being left behind does not diminish the measure of a person. That dignity is not taken by others but preserved quietly within. Awe. And Miss Marple, ever patient, felt the soft power of observation settle firmly in her chest. Ha ha. Noting that while some lives are interrupted by deceit, the careful attention of the mind can reclaim calm, reclaim clarity, reclaim control without ever raising a hand or a voice. Awe. And she breathed slowly, letting the warmth of understanding wash over her. Ha ha. Thinking of the many small kindnesses she could offer herself, the careful trust she could extend cautiously in the future, and the lessons learned in silence. Awe. How even the most ordinary bench, the most mundane airport hall could become a teacher if one listened closely. Ha ha. And as she stepped out into the sunlight, feeling the world continue around her, awe, she realized that she had endured, that she had seen, and that in this quiet perseverance, in this subtle triumph of awareness and patience, she had found something more powerful than anger or revenge, a steady, unshakable sense of self. Ha ha. And she carried it forward with careful steps, ready to face whatever ordinary or extraordinary trials the world might present.